Hi, I'm Erin Powell with Michigan State University Extension in Genesee County. I'm here today at Phillips Orchard and Cider Mill with Brian Phillips.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in apple orchards and apple growing?
Yeah, I mean, really, I grew up with it because I grew up here on the farm. The farm's been in my family for 167 years, so I'm the sixth generation. So I guess you could say it came naturally.
Yeah.
And then I went away for a while and worked in a whole different career field. And then in about 10 or 11 years ago, I came back and decided that this is really where I wanted to be. Great.
So what does a typical day look like for you?
You know, it depends a lot on the season of the year. You know, right now during harvest season, we're busy getting the apples in out of the orchard. That's pretty much an everyday occurrence, and of course this is our busiest time in the year for customers coming to the farm and wanting to buy apples and cider. So we're very busy every day sorting apples, getting them ready for the store, pressing cider. Then it changes a lot. In the winter, we spend most of our time out here in the orchard pruning the trees, you know, trimming branches off the trees, which we have to do every winter. And then of course we start into springtime and it changes again where we're more worried about disease management and things during the summer. So it changes during the year.
Great. So when you plant an apple tree, obviously the first year you're not going to get apples. So what is that process like? Do you add trees regularly, or you know, what does that look like?
Yeah, we do. We try to plant some trees every year.
Okay.
Rather than planting a huge quantity in a big lump and then waiting a few years, we try to plant just a few every year. And yeah, it will take several years, 3 or 4 years at least, before you really get any significant quantity of apples off the tree. So it is a long-term process. You've got to plan ahead and think about how many apples am I going to want, you know, years down the road.
So how has apple growing changed over the years? You know, you observed it as a youth and now are back into it as an adult. Have things changed?
Yeah, it continues to change, and I'm sure it will in the future. You know, when I was growing up, we still had big, full-size apple trees on the farm. You know, 30 foot high and 40 feet wide. I mean, really big trees. And as time goes by, we keep going to smaller and smaller trees. Like these trees right here in the orchard around us might be 12 feet tall. These are big by today's standards. We keep going to shorter and skinnier trees that are easier to work with without having to have big ladders and stuff.
Right.
And people are continuing to experiment with mechanization, trying to automate more of the process.
So with harvesting, is the most common just literally hand picking?
Literally picking them one at a time by hand, putting them in a bucket, and then putting them in a box that you're collecting them in. So it's very labor intensive.
Right.
Takes a lot of time. And you know, it's hard work because you have to carry those apples around on your shoulder all day, and you have to climb up and down ladders. So you know, it's not easy work. You've got to work hard for it, and that's one of the goals of the automation is even if you're using mobile platforms or things where you don't have to go up and down ladders, or you don't have to hold the apples in a basket, you have a conveying system that takes them away. So there are different things that people are working on, trying to come up with ways to make it easier to do that harvest in particular.
Right. So how many apples do you grow, or how many varieties do you guys grow on this orchard?
We grow 34 varieties of apples here. Yeah, it's quite a few. I mean, you know, most times in a grocery store you might see I have a dozen varieties in a store, and a lot of people don't even realize how many there are. And 34 seems like a lot to some people, but there are thousands.
Yeah.
So really, I like to think that anybody should be able to find some apple variety that is the one they really love, you know, because there's so many different flavors and shapes and sizes and tastes.
So do you all do any work with trying to create your own varieties here at all?
We never have, but it's something I talk about when I give tours, especially to school kids all the time, because, you know, most people don't even realize that you can't just take a seed out of an apple. You know, if I love Macintosh, I can't take a Macintosh seed and just plant it and grow more Macintosh trees.
That's what I would have thought.
That's not how it works. So you actually have to graft. You have to cut buds off of an existing tree and take them and graft them on and get them to grow on another tree. So if you cut open an apple and you've got seeds in there, every seed is a new variety that's never been seen before in the world. it's something I think that a lot of people find intriguing because they're like, who knew that every time I've ever picked up an apple, I had new ones there that it could have been the next big thing.
Oh, that's so cool. A science experiment for home, right?
There you go. Go plant some apple seeds.
So if I have an apple tree at home, I need to at least, there needs to be at least another apple tree within some sort of distance, right, for that pollination.
Has to be another apple tree, and it has to be a different variety of apples.
Oh, okay.
So if I had 2 Macintosh trees, I don't get any apples. I've got to have a Macintosh tree and a Honeycrisp tree or something, and they just have to be near enough that a bee can find both blossoms. So, you know, honeybees sometimes fly up to a mile.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be right next to your tree, but it has to be somewhere in the vicinity. There has to be another kind of apple.
Okay.
And it could even be a crab apple.
Oh, all right. So if people at home have apple trees that don't produce, it could potentially be because there's not a different variety close by.
That's one of the reasons, yeah. And that I think happens more frequently when people are maybe in a town, and so there are not a lot of farms or anything in the area, so they might be the only person in the neighborhood who's got an apple tree in their backyard, and there just aren't other apples around. So yeah, plant 2.
So, or get your neighbors to plant one, right?
There you go.
So what do you love most about your job?
What do I love most? I really enjoy being out in the orchard, and it makes me happy every time I provide some apples to a customer and they're thrilled with them. They're happy. They've got a smile on their face. It makes me happy too.
Great. Is there something interesting about apples that you think most people don't know?
Interesting about apples, most people don't know. They're related to roses.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, that's something I don't think probably most people think about.
Yeah.
But that's why 5 is an important number in that family. If you look at a rose, how the rose leaves are, you've got 5 little leaflets on a leaf. You've got 5 petals on an apple blossom. You've got 5 seeds inside the apple. So you've got 5 apple blossoms coming out of 1 bud on a tree. So 5 is like a magic number for the rose family, and I don't think most people would think a rose bush and an apple tree, they don't see the connection, but there actually is, they are connected.
Oh, that's awesome. So I have one last question. What's your favorite way to eat apples?
My favorite way is to be out in the orchard and pick one myself right off the tree.
Fresh.
I mean, you can't get any better than that. You can't get any fresher than that. So I like to just go and pick that one that looks good to me and eat it right there in the orchard.
There you go.
That's the best way.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us today, Brian. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.